You finish dinner, rinse the plate, and do the one thing you already know helps your blood sugar. A short walk around the block before the dishes are even put away. You go to bed, feeling like you did it right. And your blood sugar tomorrow morning still isn't quite what you expected. If that's happened to you, the walk wasn't wrong. It's just one habit out of several that actually matter at dinner, and most people over 60 are quietly only using one or two of them, without knowing the other several even exist. Here's what's ahead over the next few minutes. 10 dinner habits that work together to keep your blood sugar steadier overnight. What order you eat in, which carbs to trust, and which to just handle a little differently. How much protein and fiber actually belong on the plate. What's sitting in your glass. How big dinner is compared to the rest of your day. When the last bite happens, and what you do in the hour after. Some of these take 30 seconds. None of them ask you to give up a food you love. And we're saving the one for last that has almost nothing to do with your plate at all. The one thing that, some nights, matters more than everything you ate. Let's start with the plate itself, and one detail about the order you eat it in that changes how your body handles the exact same meal. Number 10. The order you eat. Picture your plate the second it lands in front of you tonight. Chicken or fish on one side, rice or potatoes in the middle, vegetables pushed to the edge like an afterthought. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The order you eat that same plate in changes how your body handles it, even though the food never changes. In a small trial of adults with type 2 diabetes, eating the protein and the vegetables first, and saving the rice, bread, or potato for last, cut the after-meal glucose spike by about 54% compared with eating the starch first. Same plate, same portions, same fork, just a different order. The mechanism is simple once you see it. Protein and fiber slow down how fast your stomach empties into your small intestine, so when the carbohydrate finally arrives, it's absorbed into your blood gradually, instead of all at once. Eat the carb first, on an empty stomach, and it hits your blood almost immediately. Nothing on your plate has to change tonight, just the sequence. Take 3 or 4 bites of the meat or fish and the vegetables first. Then start on the rice, the pasta, or the potato you were going to eat anyway. It costs nothing, takes no extra time, and works with whatever you're already cooking. Restaurant plate or your own kitchen, holiday dinner or an ordinary Tuesday. You're not adding a rule to remember at every meal for the rest of your life. You're just moving your fork to a different part of the plate first, for the next few bites, before you get to the part you were going to eat anyway. What you actually put on that plate is next. Number 9. Which carb you trust. You already changed the order. Now here's the part that surprises almost everyone. The kind of carbohydrate on that plate matters less than you've probably been told, and one banned food might not deserve its reputation at all. Potatoes get blamed constantly for spiking blood sugar, usually in the same breath as white rice. So researchers actually tested them side by side at dinner in adults with type 2 diabetes. Boiled potato, roasted potato, even potato that had been cooked and cooled, all went up against an equal calorie serving of basmati rice. Across the board, the potato held its own against the rice, and in some cases came out ahead of it, with the potato-based dinners producing overnight glucose responses that were just as good, or better. That doesn't mean every starch is interchangeable, or that portions stop mattering. It means the instinct to eliminate a whole food because of its reputation, rather than looking at what the research on that specific food actually shows, can cost you a food you don't need to give up. The practical version: don't assume a carbohydrate is automatically the enemy just because it's carb-heavy on paper. If potato is something you enjoy and can afford, a moderate, skin-on serving at dinner is not the villain some lists make it out to be. Rice isn't the villain either. Sweet potato, corn, whole grain pasta, they all belong in the same conversation. A normal portion alongside the protein and vegetables you're already prioritizing, not a food to eliminate out of habit. What matters more is the amount, and one step almost nobody thinks to take before eating it. Number 8. Let it go cold first. Here's something strange. The exact same bowl of rice, cooked from the exact same pot, can behave differently in your body, based on nothing more than whether it came straight off the stove or spent time in the refrigerator first. In a study of adults with type 1 diabetes, rice that was cooked, cooled in the refrigerator for 24 hours, and then reheated, produced a meaningfully lower blood sugar peak and a smaller total glucose rise than the same rice eaten fresh off the stove. The reason has a name: resistant starch, and it comes down to something that happens to the starch itself while it sits in the refrigerator. Some of the molecules rearrange into a structure your digestive enzymes have a harder time breaking apart. A portion of that starch passes through mostly undigested instead of turning into blood sugar the same way fiber does. It works with rice, and researchers have measured a similar effect with potatoes, cooked and then cooled. This effect isn't identical in every study, though. Some testing in healthy adults has found a smaller benefit than the diabetes-specific research above shows. It's worth doing, not a guarantee. The practical version costs almost nothing. Cook your rice or your potatoes the night before, or even that morning, refrigerate it, and reheat a portion for dinner instead of serving it straight off the stove. Reheating doesn't undo the effect. The structural change already happened while it was cooling. Same food, same effort, a body that has an easier time with it. The carb side is covered now. What's still missing is the side most people barely notice. Number 7. A real portion of fiber, not a garnish. The vegetables on most dinner plates are decoration. A few slices of cucumber, a sprig of parsley, something green pushed to the rim mostly for color. That's not enough fiber to do the job fiber is actually capable of doing. Soluble fiber, the kind in beans, lentils, oats, and most vegetables, forms a kind of gel in your digestive tract once it mixes with water. That gel physically slows down how fast the sugar from your meal reaches your bloodstream, the same way a screen door slows down, without stopping, what comes through it. A review pooling 22 separate clinical trials in people with type 2 diabetes found that around 10 grams of fiber a day meaningfully lowered fasting blood sugar, average blood sugar over time, and fasting insulin, with the biggest benefit coming from the soluble kind specifically, not fiber from any food in general. 10 grams isn't dramatic. That's roughly a cup of cooked lentils, or a large serving of broccoli and a side salad, added to what's already on the plate. Tonight's version: instead of a token vegetable garnish, build a real half-plate portion, beans, lentils, a vegetable you actually like, and treat it as load-bearing, not decorative. Frozen and canned both count here. Plain, low-sodium versions work as well as fresh, so this doesn't have to mean an expensive produce run every week. Your plate is doing more work now, but one thing is still unbuilt. Number 6. Anchor the meal with real protein. I already had protein today, at lunch. That's the thought that talks a lot of people out of prioritizing it again at dinner. And it's an understandable one. It's also not quite how this particular lever works. In a study comparing a high-protein evening meal against a standard one with the same number of calories, the high-protein version cut the overnight glucose rise by about 71%. The mechanism is straightforward. Protein slows digestion the same way fiber does, and it triggers hormones that help regulate how much glucose your liver releases into your blood after you eat, on top of whatever's coming from the meal itself. Most research on this points to somewhere around 20 to 30 grams of protein at dinner as the useful range, roughly a palm-sized portion of chicken, fish, tofu, or legumes, maybe a bit more if you're pairing it with a starchier side. Going far beyond that, well past 50 grams in one sitting, doesn't add the same benefit and can work against you overnight in some people, so more isn't automatically better here. If dinner tends to be your lightest meal on protein, the fix isn't complicated. A bigger portion of fish, chicken, eggs, beans, or tofu, not a supplement, not a shake, just more of what's already sitting in your kitchen. Canned salmon, canned beans, a couple of eggs added to a vegetable dish. All count, and all cost less than most protein powders on the shelf. The plate is nearly built now. What's in your glass is the one piece most people never check. Number 5. What's actually in your glass? A few videos ago, we walked through drinks that quietly spike blood sugar. Dinner has its own version of that problem, and it runs in the opposite direction. A glass of wine or a cocktail with dinner doesn't spike your blood sugar the way a sugary drink does. The real risk shows up hours later, while you're asleep, and it's the reverse, a drop, not a rise. Here's the mechanism. When alcohol enters your system, your liver treats clearing it as the priority job, ahead of its normal work of releasing stored glucose to keep your blood sugar steady overnight. That delay in the liver's usual glucose release can lower blood sugar for up to 8 to 24 hours after drinking, well into the night, while you're not awake to notice how you feel. This matters most, and matters a lot, if insulin or a medication called a sulfonylurea is part of your routine, because those medications already lower blood sugar, and the combination compounds the effect. The drop can also feel a lot like ordinary tiredness, easy to sleep through, easy to miss. None of this means alcohol is off the table entirely. It means treating it the way you'd treat any other dinner variable, aware of the amount, aware of the timing, and, if you're on either of those medications, a quick conversation with your doctor or pharmacist about what's actually safe for you specifically. Having it with food rather than on an empty stomach also blunts the drop somewhat. A small buffer, not a fix on its own. We'll come back to that in a minute. Right now, a bigger variable is hiding in plain sight: how big dinner actually is. Number 4. Don't let dinner be the biggest meal of your day. For most people, dinner isn't just a meal. It's the reward at the end of the day. The one you actually sit down for. The one that gets the biggest portions and the most attention. Breakfast is rushed or skipped, lunch is whatever's fastest, and dinner absorbs most of the day's calories almost by default. Nobody decides this on purpose. It just happens, night after night. That default is worth questioning, because it works against you. In a randomized trial in people with type 2 diabetes, researchers compared two groups eating identical total daily calories. One eating a large breakfast and a small dinner, the other eating a small breakfast and a large dinner. The large breakfast, small dinner group had significantly lower blood sugar spikes across the entire day and lost more weight, even though the total food eaten was the same. The likely reason is your body's own internal clock. Your ability to release insulin efficiently and your muscles' ability to pull glucose out of your blood both run on a rhythm that tends to work in your favor earlier in the day and less efficiently by evening. The same calories, the same carbohydrate, simply get handled better at 3 in the afternoon than at 8 at night. You don't have to flip your entire eating pattern overnight, and nobody's asking you to skip dinner. The workable version is smaller. Shift some of what you'd normally eat at dinner earlier in the day instead. A slightly bigger lunch, a real breakfast instead of just coffee, and a dinner that's satisfying without being the day's biggest event by a wide margin. If dinner is genuinely the only meal you enjoy sitting down for, that's real too, and worth being honest about. Small trims still count more than an overhaul you won't keep. Even a partial shift moves the math in your favor. Timing turns out to matter almost as much as size. Number 3. Give your last bite some room. It's 9:30 at night. The dishes from an 8 o'clock dinner are still soaking. The television is on. Bed is maybe an hour away, and nobody thinks twice about it. In one small trial, people with type 2 diabetes whose usual dinner landed past 10 at night were asked to move that same dinner earlier, to roughly 7:30, with nothing else changed. Same food, same amount, same medication, same sleep, right down to the clock. Their next morning fasting blood sugar fell, on average, from roughly 120 to roughly 105. Nobody had to eat less or eat differently. The only variable that moved was how much time passed between the last bite and the body's own overnight processes taking over. This is a small trial, and it's not a guarantee for every single person, but the direction it points is consistent with a simple idea. Your body needs some runway between dinner and sleep to finish handling what you just ate before it shifts into its overnight routine. The workable version isn't a strict cutoff enforced with a kitchen timer. It's aiming to put your fork down 2 to 3 hours ahead of bedtime, instead of eating right up to the moment you turn in. If 10 o'clock is roughly when you fall asleep, that could mean finishing dinner by 7 or 7:30 instead of 8:30 or 9. Some evenings, a genuinely late dinner is unavoidable. A family visit, a late shift, a doctor's appointment that ran long, and one late night isn't going to undo anything. It's the habitual pattern, night after night, that this is actually about. Small shift, same food, more room for your body to work with. Number 2, the walk, and why it matters most right now. You already know a walk after eating helps. Here's the detail almost nobody mentions. It doesn't help equally after every meal. It matters most, specifically, after dinner. Researchers put this to the test in adults 60 and older at risk for type 2 diabetes. 3 short 15-minute walks, one after each meal, kept blood sugar in check across the whole day, nearly as well as one uninterrupted 45-minute walk. The dinner walk was the standout. Broken into short bursts placed right after eating, the exercise blunted the glucose spike that follows the evening meal for as long as 3 hours afterward. In a way, the one long walk simply didn't match. The likely reason comes back to dinner's own math. It's usually the day's largest meal, the one most likely to be eaten later, closer to when your body's efficiency is already starting to dip for the day. A short walk right afterward gives your muscles somewhere to send that glucose, burning it as fuel and needing less insulin to manage it. You don't need real exercise clothes, a route, or a set distance for this to count. 10 to 15 minutes is enough. Around the block, a couple of loops through the living room before the dishes get done, even pacing while you're on a call with someone. If mobility makes walking hard some evenings, standing and shifting your weight, or a few minutes of seated leg movements, still gives your muscles somewhere to send that glucose, just at a smaller scale. This is one habit of 10, not the whole plan. Tomorrow's number depends on more than your legs. It depends on something that has almost nothing to do with dinner at all. Number 1, protect your wind down before bed. Here's the one we saved for last, the one that has almost nothing to do with your plate. If you watched the video on why blood sugar so often runs highest first thing in the morning, you already know about the liver's alarm clock, the hormone-timed release of stored sugar that happens in the hours before you wake up, whether or not dinner was right. What we didn't cover there is that how well you sleep and how wound up you are before you fall asleep can turn that alarm clock louder or quieter. Poor sleep and evening stress that follows you to bed both raise cortisol, the same hormone family behind that early morning glucose release. That's been measured after even a single night of bad sleep, not just chronic sleep problems. A tense, wired evening doesn't just cost you a good night's rest. It can hand your liver a louder signal to release more sugar than it otherwise would, on top of whatever else that morning number was already going to reflect. This is why 2 people can do every single habit on this list identically. The order, the portions, the timing, the walk, and still wake up to different numbers some mornings. The plate was never the only variable. The hour or 2 before you fall asleep is doing quiet work too. You don't need a meditation app or a complicated ritual for this to count. Turning the television or the phone off 20 to 30 minutes before bed instead of scrolling until your eyes close, sitting somewhere calm instead of somewhere stimulating, even just a few slow breaths instead of replaying the day's stress list, all genuinely count as protecting your wind down. If something specific is keeping you wired most nights, worry about a bill, a family situation, pain that flares after dark. That's worth naming honestly, rather than just breathing through it, because the underlying stress is the thing actually driving the hormone, not the breathing exercise itself. 10 habits, and not one of them asks you to give up a food you love or overhaul your entire evening. Do 2 or 3 of these consistently, most nights, and that beats doing all 10 perfectly once and burning out on the rest. One thing worth saying plainly. If insulin or a sulfonylurea medication is something you take regularly, a handful of these habits, shifting dinner's timing, changing its size, or adding alcohol, deserve a short conversation with your doctor or pharmacist first. Not because they're risky on their own, but because those medications are dosed around your current pattern, and shifting several things about your evening at once can change how that medication behaves overnight. It's a short question for your pharmacist next time you're picking up a refill, nothing that has to hold up the habits that don't touch your medication at all. Bring this list along if it helps the conversation. Tonight's one step. There's no need to start all 10 of these tonight, so here's the one to actually do. Tonight, when your plate is in front of you, eat the protein and the vegetables first, and save the rice, bread, or potato for the last few bites. Same food, same portions, just that one small reorder, before you think about touching anything else on this list. If the other 9 start to feel natural over the next few weeks, good, add them in. But this one, tonight, is the whole assignment. Want all 10 laid out together, with exact portions and a simple evening checklist for the fridge? That's exactly what the free action guide covers. Look for the link below this video and pinned in the comments. Out of these 10, which ones are you already doing without realizing it, and which one genuinely caught you off guard? Drop it in the comments. I go through every single one. If a straight answer like this one is what you actually want from a health video, subscribing puts the next one in front of you automatically, no searching required. Coming up next, we're looking at whether snacking throughout the day actually keeps blood sugar steadier than sticking to 3 regular meals, or whether that's another habit worth questioning.